Good afternoon, everyone. So, good afternoon, everyone. All right, good, good. So, testimony, right? So, as he said, I'm a preacher. So, that would mean that testimony is not a sermon, right? We can agree? So, that's why I have my phone. I want you to know that because I need some notes to make sure that I don't start to preach to you and I kind of testify, okay? So, my testimony will start with uh, reaching. How do we know when we're stretching right? Anybody tell me? Does stretching hurt? It shouldn't. Stretching actually should just cause a little bit of discomfort, but not pain, okay? So when I think about stretching or reaching, I think about discomfort, okay? And so if you had told me when I was your age that I would be a preacher, I would have laughed at you. Because my dream in life at 15, 16, was to join the NFL. Be a running back, play for a team. Now, here's what's interesting. I have never stepped foot in an NFL stadium. But at 15, you would not have been able to convince me that I wouldn't do that, okay? And so how does that relate to reaching? Reaching is about what we reach out to or reach up for or aspire, right? That's how I see reaching. And there is some biblical definition to reaching in that sense. So when I believe God talked to me about reaching and how to reach you or begin to talk to you about reaching, there's a couple of ways and a couple of things that we can reach out to or reach out for, okay? When I was your age, or about a little older than you, so at 18, 17 years old, my reaching was wrong. I was reaching for things in the world, okay? I was reaching for things that my friends were doing. I was reaching for things that I thought would make me feel better, would make me look better, would make me sound better. That's what I was reaching for. Now, obviously, reaching today for those things looks a little different to you, but how many times in a bad situation or in a difficult situation where you feel like you're being stretched, do you reach to social media? Maybe. How many times do you reach to a friend? How many times do you reach to your family, your mother, your sister, your brother, right? But then how many times do you reach to God? Okay? So when I think of reaching, I'm also reminded of the parable or the story, I would say, of Peter and Jesus on a lake, right? And so sometimes I would say at a younger age, I say our age, at your age, you may think that reaching out to God or reaching out to Jesus is a difficult thing, right? Seems kind of weird maybe because he's not a physical person, okay? How do you reach to a spirit? How do you reach to what you don't see? That's where faith comes in, okay? And so as God reaches to us, we should reach back to him because one of the things that we'll learn, I'm sure today, is that the best use of our life is based on our kingdom assignment. Now, maybe that's kind of heavy for you, but the reality is when I wanted to be in the NFL, that had nothing to do with God. Nothing. It was all based on what I thought I should be doing with my life. However, when I became a youth pastor, actually when I got into youth ministry and started to see that I really have a heart for youth based on all the things that I experienced as a young person, I realized that is where I should be. At that point, I began to reach back to God. Now, in my life, I would say he had been reaching out to me all of my life. Even in a situation when I was younger and I made quite a few mistakes, he was still reaching out to me. Another story that I remember that's very prominent in my life is when I was in the Army and I was a medic. And I would definitely say the first time I began to reach back to God was in basic training. And that was because at 18, that was the first time I had ever been away from home. And I'll be honest with you, for about the first 2 weeks of basic, I cried every day. Because what you go through in basic training, right? It's really not that hard looking back, but in that moment, that was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. And so then I found myself saying, well, if God has been reaching out to me, how do I begin to reach back to him, right? So that was when I started to develop a prayer life. And it's funny because a lot of times in difficult situations, it's real easy to start praying to God because you don't know what else to do. I didn't know who else to call on because everybody else around me was going through the exact same thing that I was going through, okay? So I reached back to God then. Another time that I remember reaching back to God was when I went to Iraq, okay? So I'm reminded of a story. There were about 30, 45 days where we had literally been attacked every day. What that means in a war zone is that every day someone shot at us, they tried to blow us up, they literally tried to kill us, okay, for 30 to 45 days. And I remember one day walking down this, it's actually in the desert, but I say walking down, right? But walking in this area and thinking that this next step could be my last step because that's how much we had been attacked. But it was in that moment that I can remember distinctly reaching out. And this is broad daylight. I'm walking down an area to get to where I work, and I remember reaching my hands up because that's just how heavy things were in my life because I feared that I would die because that's how many times we had been attacked. But reaching, that's what we're talking about. At 15, 16, 17, whatever your age is, I can guarantee you, when you reach out to God, he'll reach back to you. That's my testimony.